I hope you're all doing amazing. Today we are going to talk about sustainable minds, which mean how can we keep our mental health sustainable throughout the year. Okay, so hi there, hello. If you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up and let me introduce myself. My name is Angel Anjali. Here is Melissa. I think we're going. It's gone again. All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm just trying to. Yeah, here she is.
I
Yay.
made it so good.
So we made it. We made it. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. I was just introducing myself. So my name is Angel Anjali, if you like to call me, and I have been movement coach for women for 15 to 16 years and nutrition counselor as well as founder of this platform. And yeah, welcome, Mel. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here,
Thank
everybody.
you so much for inviting me on. I mean, we were speaking a little bit beforehand, but yeah, I feel so grateful for the work that you do, not only for our community, but also your community of women back home in Nepal. I think the work that you do is incredibly, special. And yeah, and we were talking off air a bit about that kind of work, but I think you should be incredibly proud of what you
Thank
do
you.
and how you do it.
Yes, no, without the community, I wouldn't have been able to ground myself, and remind myself why did I start and where I want to go. Where do
Mm.
I want to go, right? And so the community has been huge support for me. So I'm very grateful. And like yourself, being here and supporting me all the time. So yeah, and everyone else in here
Mm.
who is watching. So I was going to read your bio quickly.
Sure.
So Melissa is a clinical psychologist and founder of Zenso House. Zenso, is that how I
Yeah.
say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was like, my pronunciation sometimes is like, oh my God, my Nepalese comes out.
It's all good.
Yeah. Her work integrates intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, ISTDP,
Mm-hmm.
with psychology-based breathwork to support emotional regulation, relational change, and embodied psychological health.
Mm.
She is known for working at the intersection of neuroscience and somatic experience, helping people move beyond insight into lived
Mm.
sustainable change. And I have been watching your work as well, and there is so much vulnerability, and as well as your lived experience, and it always gets me. I'm like, Mel, you did it again, and then it's
Oh,
like,
bless you.
yeah, especially during the Christmas time, it was, like when you were coming up with these kind of things, and it would always make me think twice, and and make my day productive, like thinking about useful things.
Oh, so good. I love that. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's, it's good to hear because often, when you're putting out this material on social media, you don't know if it's resonating with people or who's benefiting from it, right? So when
Yes.
people feel really seen or really heard or
Mm.
yeah, it means a lot. And yeah, recently I've had people reaching out to me and thanking me a lot more, and that, yeah, it makes it worthwhile. Because I guess you can imagine this behind the scenes, it's hours of work behind
Oh,
like a single post, and I think, oh my
oh,
gosh, like
yes.
is this
Yeah.
useful? And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's really
No,
great when it
you
resonates.
are, yeah, it is a lot of vulnerability when you're putting out your lived experience, but at the
Mm,
same time, asking question from the, when you come from that background, for me, it's so easy to go towards the feeling of I will be I'll get validation from it, like the
mm,
the the thing that you never got, or the you will feel
mm,
seen then, right?
mm,
And
mm,
so And but Ange, this is not about you. This is the
Mm,
message that you are trying to bring. So it's the constant
absolutely.
reminder.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So yeah, I applaud you for
yeah.
bringing that out and for the educational purposes and guiding people to the right space.
Thank you.
So yeah, and before we start,
Mm,
I wanted to read a brief disclaimer that
mm,
this talk is all about to bring awareness and general information. If anyone needs support, please connect with Melissa directly or your health practitioner, right? Did you want
mm.
to add anything on that?
No, I think that's perfect. Just remembering that Instagram isn't therapy. And sometimes I may say things that may stir up feelings in people, and just remembering,
Mm,
none of this is personal. Any specific stories I may share are de identified and general in nature. So it's more to provide an example of something
mm,
rather than someone's specific clinical story. So,
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, let's start. What does sustainable mental health mean from the clinical psychologist perspective?
mm. It's a really good question. When I think of sustainable mental health, and particularly from a psychological lens, I'm thinking of how can someone respond moment to
Mm,
moment? Because often when we come from a trauma history,
mm,
right, our brain is signaling threat or detecting threat moment to moment. And so what that does is it has us in quite a reactive state.
yes.
So it means our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that makes decisions, that discerns, is this a real threat versus a perceived threat, isn't working normally. And the other part of the brain that's affected is memory, right? The hippocampus. So when I think of sustainable mental health, I think of a mind that can tolerate adversity, that can deal with different situations arising.
Mm,
And it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm okay with this, or yeah, that's
mm,
upset me a little, but I can set a boundary here. The other part is that for lots of us, particularly I think our generation, and we grew up in, and I understand that your cultural lens will be
mm,
different to mine
yes.
somewhat, right? As will our audiences, but certainly as an Anglo-Saxon female brought up in Australia, like there was a big pressure on, compliance and saying yes. And so what I see a lot in the women who I work with specifically is this tendency to say yes when they really mean no, and perhaps overperform, overgive. So a lot of sustainable mental health is around like, can I set boundaries? Can I
Mm,
hold myself in care? Can I notice? I think we're talking a bit off air about this, like when I'm, resenting something and I need to
yes.
perhaps take a step back and nurture my own internal experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we could look at sustainable mental health across a lot of lenses. But for me, the key part is like, can I respond to my
Yeah.
experience and make choices that are good for me?
Yeah, amazing. So there is so much to unpack from
Mm,
your own lived experience, and especially when you are in that, what you do
yeah.
is it would be the constant reminder for yourself that are you in the right space, right?
Mhm.
And like when I'm showing up for myself as well, am I coming, how can I be the responsive person, not
Mm,
responsive, like not reactive. And
yes.
what is that going to bring? Because
Mm,
you never feel good when you're reactive, right?
mm, mm, mm. What
So,
essentially, yeah, the nervous system is signaling that there's threat when there's not
mm,
usually threat. It's like, I don't know if you're ever like this at the end of the day with your kids and they're being
yes,
challenging as children can be. And then I have so many mums who come to me and they're like, I'm just so reactive and yelling and,
mm,
and that's not how I want to be. And that's often because their nervous system is, just so on edge all the time. They haven't really got the tools to kind of teach that nervous system that children aren't a threat, that, they know that in their high
mm,
mind, and
yes,
a lot of that work is like, okay, can we help you to feel more regulated so that when your children are being reactive and difficult as they can be
mm,
at the end of the school day, that they can discern that and then do something to take care of themselves, which might be sometimes leaving the room, having a cup of tea on the deck or having a shower or going for a run,
Mm,
right? For single parents, that's a bit harder, but we can take ourselves out of a situation so that we can take care of ourselves. But it's also having the ability to have our prefrontal cortex online so we can make that choice. And I think for a lot of
mm,
women, that's where they struggle. They're like, I just say something, and then I'm like, oh, I can't believe that's happened. So yeah, I think it's complicated, and I think often with the economic pressures that a lot of people feel
yes.
at the moment, it can be really hard for people to take that step back and actually take the time to heal themselves. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, with me, with the children, you gave that example. I
Mm,
had the huge resentment towards my son, but I did not realize for a long time because I felt always we were headbutting towards like each other, and
mm,
I would cry and cry, and what is going on?
mm,
Why I'm not a mean person, but then the way, because we were called cursed family because we were three girls and the society would call us cursed family. And when I had him, I was like, yes, we are not cursed. I broke this cycle. And then from then I took that, with him that, oh, you are a boy, what do you know? With
mm,
that my childhood thing,
mm,
and after I realized that, I start doing how am I responding to him?
mm,
Is this, and then when he says something, instead of reacting, he's just your kid. He's not
yeah,
the people who said that we were cursed back in a village,
incorrect.
right?
Yeah.
So I had to remind myself that it has been a lot of work on that side.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting because for teenagers, it's actually their developmental duty to
Mm.
become autonomous, right? But
Yes.
when we look at autonomy, that's often not fun to parent. Like an autonomous child, a child who's willful and joyous and enthusiastic, is often
Mm.
like really tough
Yeah.
to parent, particularly if you're coming from this mindset of like, yeah, a boy's meant to bring in good things into our life,
Yeah.
or he represents this like feared person who was like
Mm.
traumatizing and projecting onto me that I was cursed, like, so it's kind of like so complicated in terms of the
Oh,
layering of
yes.
this, right? So
Mm.
I think for parents, I'm like, bravo, man. It's hard work. I mean, we love our kids, right? But they're also intense. And so, yeah, especially when there's also this traumatic layering around it, I
Yes.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, and marvelous that you did the work to notice what was yours, right?
Yeah.
So then,
Journaling. Yeah. Journaling. Break. Every time when I
um,
had that feeling, I start asking myself and journaling, and then meditation. And when I broke it down, the message became clear that, oh,
um,
hang on. Okay. So that is I'm not a psychologist or
mm,
healthcare
mm,
practitioner, but I worked in myself that
mm,
way. Yeah, it helped me a lot. Yeah.
Well,
So yeah. So what is the preventative mental health practices? Oh, sorry. What preventative mental health practices have the strongest evidence of long-term well-being?
I think anything that helps you to stay, within your body,
Yeah.
and so to help the body to feel safe, which then
Mm,
helps, your cognitive mind to stay intact. So I think currently the most evidence-based research that we have is around, meditation or mindfulness
mm.
practices. So sometimes that can look as simple as I like to use a yoga nidra practice, which is watching like the shadows, like
Ah,
looking
yes.
looking in the shadows. It can be as simple as, listening to music and noticing the inflection in the artist's voice, or,
Mm,
singing along to music. Like, I think often we tend to think of meditation as this like deeply intense practice,
mm,
but it's often just helping us to get back into our body, to notice what our body's signaling about a situation. Do we feel
mm,
safe, unsafe, so that the mind can then discern, right? So yeah, when we look at evidence-based practices currently, it's often around those kind of mindfulness practices, also using things like ice packs, back of the neck, front of the face, initiates the dive reflex, which can help us to bring us back into a relaxed state, intense exercise, progressive muscle relaxation, which is tightening of all the muscles in the body. You know, these are all
Mm,
practices that help us get back into our body, so then we can start to think
mm,
about what happened that might be causing a reaction in us. And I think often, you know, we try and do the thinking before we've done the regulation. So the part that's often missing for people is that if the body doesn't feel safe, then that they
mm.
won't be able to think because the
Think.
brain won't be back online. So I think in terms of sustainable practices, it's really leaning into those things, and then just getting the basics right, like getting enough sleep. Women,
Mm,
particularly, I mean, I'm perimenopausal,
yes.
and menopausal women have a much higher sleep need.
Mm,
So sleep regulates all of our neurohormones, which then gives us a sustainable mind, right? Getting morning light and evening light also helps
mm,
all of our hormones to operate properly, particularly as sleep becomes
yes.
disrupted as we age, and then eating a nutritious diet. I mean, like lots of people will roll their eyes at this, but if I
Yes.
could get someone to do one thing different, it would just be sleep earlier and longer and get first exposure to natural light.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
not wearing sunglasses, allowing it, you know, it just helps so much. And I think,
The natural, the light into your eyes. I was listening to someone podcast,
mm,
so that is how your body responds. That okay, it's a morning time, and
mm,
but when you put the sunglasses on, your mind doesn't, your subconscious mind or mind, your brain.
well, it's a part of your brain that receives that input, right? Like the
Mm,
sunlight actively communicates with the part of your brain that regulates sleep hormones. So also cortisol. So if you get light in that first hour, you get a spike of cortisol, which actually increases energy. Like often we think of cortisol as a bad thing, but we actually need it for energy. So
mm,
you know, early risers tend to be more energetic, I think, because they get access to that cortisol
yeah.
spike. So I think it's complicated, but yeah, if we break it down to first light, you know, rising with the sun, sleeping with the sun, you know, we're going to tend to have better mental health in general without doing any other intervention.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's yeah, you have put so many points there. I have to
Mhm.
go back and write it all down. So so the easy basic one is just, yeah, expose yourself with the natural
Mhm.
light.
Mhm.
No
Mhm.
sunglasses.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even reading glasses, because often they have UV
Yes.
coating in them.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can even take off any glasses that you're wearing and just
Yeah.
expose, because the morning light isn't dangerous. It
Yeah.
doesn't tend to cause skin cancer, and neither does the evening light. So lots of people will be quite anxious about that exposure to sunlight, but yeah, it
Yes.
doesn't tend to cause harm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
And you're very
And
welcome.
yeah, what simple daily habits most support a sustainable mind?
I think I've
Yeah,
probably
we
reached into
already
this
touched on that.
question.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. But
So,
you know, I think a really underestimated activity is just physical movement too.
yes,
Right. And I think the current research is showing that physical movement multiple times a day, and it doesn't have to be intense exercise. It can just be going for a block walk, or
mm,
but getting also that regular sun exposure throughout the day. Because I mean, particularly me, I work in an enclosed environment. I don't
yes,
get a lot of natural light, so we don't get a lot of that feedback from the
mm,
sun that helps us our hormones and
yeah,
how we sleep and operate. So you know, like a lot of our mental health is based on our hormonal health. So even if we can get outside and move daily, again, it doesn't have to be intense. It can be really minimal movement. But I think all of that helps our mind operate and all of our hormones signal in the ways that they're intended to signal.
yeah. So when I'm working from home, I'm I I don't know if you know Thich Nhat. Thich
No.
Nhat,
Oh,
he's a
yeah, yeah,
gentleman. Yeah,
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
he puts the at his in his village, he puts the 15 minutes timer on every time,
Mm,
and then everyone has to stop.
mm,
And then so since then I start putting 15 minutes timer on,
mm,
and then I go, because I work from home, so I go for
mm.
the walk around the kitchen and upstairs to the bedroom and come down, and then
So
just
good.
like, okay, breathing now. Breathe. Have you been breathing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know
absolutely.
It's because sometimes when you have this so many things you're doing,
Yeah.
like I have noticed the shallow breathing is so, I'm like, oh my God, okay. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, I this is all I need, 15 minutes. I have so much to do. But at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same time, and at the same time, when you said that, when I'm gone for walking and things like that, my legs are not as tight.
Mm, mm,
Sitting on a chair, like with
mm,
the movement coaching side of thing, that when you're moving, it's great for mind as well as the simple thing as the legs tightening and the body tightening.
mm,
If you
mm,
stand up and move, the
mm,
the circulation in your body, and it's so much less pain.
mm.
The tightness. Yeah, it's not a good feeling when your body becomes tight, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah,
also just think, I work a lot with ADHDers, and we tend to be people who process, through activity as well. So it's
yeah,
like when we're like trying to force ourselves to sit in this kind of like systematic way, it also just doesn't allow the natural way that different minds process information differently, right? So
mm,
I think when we're looking at a sustainable practice daily, it's really about ascertaining like what helps me. Like, for example,
mm,
I love moving my body early in the morning. That helps
yes,
me feel more present and connected. But for other people, they really like a slow morning and to exercise in the middle of the day or in the evening, right? So
yeah,
part of it is like ascertaining like what's best for me and
yeah,
starting to play around with a few different things. And I tend to recommend like trying one thing for 3 months
yeah.
before
Oh yes,
stacking a new habit, because I often find we try and stack all these habits and it just doesn't land, right? Whereas if we
yes,
can actually slow down and think, oh yeah, this thing really resonates with me. Let me get really good at that, so it becomes something that I do from that automatic part of my brain rather than having to consciously think of it, and then I can stack the next thing.
yeah,
Yeah, it just tends to be less to hold in mind concurrently.
yeah. And then it will become once it becomes like a habit, you don't have to think as hard,
Bingo.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it becomes habitual.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's always
yeah,
been right. I think we've always got a lot on the go as women as well, so making things as simple as possible for ourselves. And that's the other thing, like I think a sustainable mind needs space in a
yes,
society where we're just so much about stacking. And I honestly cannot talk because, if you look at my diary today, it's absolutely bonkers. But in general, I think the more space we have, the more creative and alive we feel, the more sustainable our mind is experienced. So part of it is like wherever you can, like just create space in your day. Like
yes,
we have such an idea that space is lazy or, but I think it's actually really important for the mind to recalibrate, particularly given how much data we receive
yes,
each day. Like in that book, there's a book by James Nestor called Breathe, and he talks about that in historical times, cavemen would have experienced the stimulus that we experience in one day across their whole lifetime.
yeah. Wow,
So
that's incredible.
yeah, it's intense. Our lives are intense. So I think also just, turning off phones, leaving them
Mm,
downstairs as you go to sleep, like really giving yourself time to detox from
yeah,
information is also really important.
yeah. And I realized the more I've been practicing to give myself a break, I've
Mm,
realized that the productivity doubles,
yeah, it's massive.
right? And why was I dragging this?
Yeah, yeah.
Why was I dragging my rest? But then in the back of my, the small voice, you don't want to be
Yeah,
lazy. You don't want to say, like and then sometimes the people ask, so what have you been doing all day? Like I
yeah,
did this. I was
yeah.
like, and then, but like, if you know the information better, you apply that, and you just, I guess I had to start standing up for myself, saying that
Mm,
this works for me better.
mm,
And when I slow down, when I'm really tired, instead of dragging,
mm,
once I stop, the productivity is like 5 minutes. If it
mm.
was taking me hours to do it, and then, oh, well, what was the problem,
Yeah, 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 fully. Look, it's I think what we tend to put ourselves through is wild. Um,
Yeah,
And I don't think we would mistreat our children or our friends in the ways
No,
that we mistreat ourselves. So I think when we
ourselves.
take that lens of curiosity, like what's the function of my overworking? Why am I doing that? Then, yeah, it can also allow us to just be like, oh, I actually don't have to carry all of this pressure that I put on me.
Mm,
And I can just allow more time in my day to just blob and be still, and that's also what life is about, right? We're not machines.
yes. Let's say um, more being and doing, balancing the being and
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Was it Eckhart Tolle?
Mm,
Eckhart Tolle, he says, the balancing of being and doing. I was
mm,
like, okay, that's interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, how does community connection contribute to sustainable mental health?
Oh, look, I think it's everything. For me personally, I think that connection is something that's inbuilt wired into us as mammals.
Yeah.
We reproduce in community. We 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 create in community. So I often think this is the part that gets hurt in trauma, particularly when it's, someone we know or a family member, is then sometimes we don't feel safe around other people. And so
Mhm.
often, that's where healing can happen. So I think I can't remember the doctor's name who was at your last networking event, but she does the social prescribing.
Dr. Kulchit.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
really believe in that kind of thing, that when we can connect with other people and feel really
Mm,
seen and really loved exactly as we are. I think you talked about this at your events, like you
yes.
really nurture people, particularly people who perhaps don't feel as confident in these kind
Yes.
of social environments. And I feel really similarly that, when people learn that they're okay and they're loved exactly as they are,
Yeah.
then they don't spend as much time worrying and thinking that things are going to go bad when they're not, right? They have this corrective experience that I can be me and I can still be loved. And that can be incredibly healing relationally. So I think, yeah, when we can
Yes.
build communities that are inviting of people exactly as they are, I think,
Mm.
yeah, it helps
And
people.
yeah, and it's so beautiful to see when people blossom from that
Mm,
just tiny little action of, hey, you
mm,
came, thank you so much for being here. And
mm,
because obviously when they come there, it's a big step for them, right?
mm,
And when I open my networking speech saying this is not for sales and you're welcome as you are, no pressure. And when you say that, and I try to share my lived experience as well, but not
mm,
in a the validation side, but I start
mm,
learning. I start the saying, telling my story for the sake of the like creating, building community, and they can see that they are accepted as who they are, and
mm,
so it is really powerful. It
mm.
is so it's so beautiful to see those people when they are quiet and they shy, and then all of a sudden they start like, wow, where were you?
Mm,
It's like, is this the
mm.
same person? Before they
Yeah,
wouldn't talk, stand up, and now they're in front of people and they're just doing like a presentation and talking. When
it's
you see that, it's like, that's
it's
amazing.
healing, right?
Yeah.
Like you're doing the work of a healer, and you probably don't see it that way, right? I know you're very
No, because I think
very
because
humble.
I went through that growing up, that people always wanted me to be somebody else, or they always said weird, strange, or oh,
Mm,
and didn't want to do anything with me. And so that is what I wanted to change,
mm, mm, mm.
because we are all different,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
And
absolutely. And it's important, right? Like it's imagine if we were all the same, like how boring
yeah,
how boring
exactly.
everything would be and predictable. And yeah, I think it's really important that we're all different. And yeah, that you can take your own trauma and, I can see you've done a lot of work there, right, to get to where you're at now, but you can then
Yes.
offer this as a healing space for other women in the business community.
Yes, no, and it has been constant work on myself as well,
Mhm.
because I'm not always very switched on like that. And sometimes I just want to curl up in a
Of
ball
course.
and, my past starting to, but then and being able to have that, what works for me, like a
Mm,
journaling and then meditation, things like that.
mm,
And I talk to the close friends,
mm,
and when I do that, and not as in, and the friends are not like, oh, you poor thing, or,
mm,
it's not like spiraling down community,
mm,
but the
mm,
people,
mm,
okay, if you're feeling this way,
mm,
that's okay. We are with you. It's all
mhm,
right. How can we help?
mhm,
And, uplifting community, right? I think that is really important to have that support who seems to be like trauma bonding. At the beginning,
mm,
I was
mhm.
trauma bonding, and then we would all go down spiral. And when we left, it's
Yeah, yeah, it
exhausting.
didn't feel
And we
good,
took
right?
everyone's each other's. And now, when we change that into our stories, into powerful message to how we
Mhm,
can change people's life or how we change our life, and
mhm,
that
mhm,
has been, you know, or is it
mhm.
turning into my like my story thing?
I love that. No, no, it's just yeah, we're just having a conversation, right? And I'm so sorry, someone just just banged on the door, so I apologize if any listeners
No, I
heard
didn't hear
someone
anything.
come in.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know you have to go. You are, super full, your schedule is. And so before you go,
Hmm.
I wanted to ask if anyone would like to ask a question and comment down below, or if you'd like to ask later on, that's okay too. Just pop it in the comment section if you have any question. But while we
Mm.
wait, Mel, let us know where people can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at
Yeah.
melissabeaton.psychologist or at Zenso House on Instagram. Otherwise, online www.zensohouse.com. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me
So
on
we'll
here
put it
today.
in
It's been
all the content. And
mm,
yeah, thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Mel. Thank you so much for your
oh
time
no,
and sharing your wisdom and insights. And we are really grateful.
you too. It's always
Thank
good to spend
you.
time with
Have an amazing day.
you too. Thanks, Ange.
Yeah, bye bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye.